Hey, what's up YouTube? Scale Model Assassin, and I'm back again with a build of the MiG-21 MF from Eduard in 1/72nd scale. This is one of their special edition kits. It's got two planes on the box, and you actually can build two planes. It's got two of every part. It's got a ton of decals. You can build, I think there's about 30 different options of plane to choose from. But the coolest thing in this kit is the booklet that comes with tons of color photos of every single plane that you've got the choice to build. This kit does come with photo etch for the cockpit. However, the plastic panels were nicely detailed, so I chose to paint them instead. I really only used three different colors, black, white, and red, and I used a photo etch that was included as a guide for what colors I should paint, each button and each knob and each little panel. In this step, I'm using an old beat up paintbrush to dry brush a little bit of sky gray over NATO black on the control stick. And because I am building two of these planes at the same time, here's a nice before and after shot. Using some of the reference photos that came in the picture book with this kit, I scratch built a few extra wires and tubing that goes on the bulkhead and is mostly hidden behind the ejection seat. I protected all of the painting I'd done on the cockpit with a coat of all-clad aqua gloss, and then I covered it with a wash of oil paint and mineral spirit. After waiting about 10 minutes, I wiped it away with a dry paper towel. Although I have come back days later and been able to just wipe it away just because the oil paint is extremely slow to dry. I'll admit that I did use photo etch on the instrument panel, however everything else was hand painted. The exhaust and the afterburner aren't very detailed, so could definitely be improved if you added some aftermarket parts. The instructions actually don't call for nose weight, but I was a little nervous, so I just stuffed as much in as I could because I didn't want to find out later that it was a typo on the instructions and have a tail sitter. The wheels come in a single piece, but they do have a mold line running right down the middle, so I sanded that off and then sanded down a spot on each one of the wheels to simulate the weight of the aircraft. I wanted to display the flaps in the downward position, so I started with cutting off the fairing, then I added on the flaps, then I made a slight modification to each fairing, the piece that I'd cut off, and then glued it back in on the underside. I didn't use any putty on the seam line between the two halves of the drop tanks. Instead, I scraped it away with the hobby knife and then used some extra thin cement to try to melt away the seam line. I did this to try to preserve the raised seams that are on the tank, which are there to simulate the welds. I decided to use a rock salt weathering technique, so after laying down the base color, which was in this case flat green, sprayed a little water over it and then dropped some rock salt on it. After the rock salt has dried on there, the next step is to spray a very thin coat of white, then remove the rock salt, then add another layer of rock salt, spray a very thin coat of black, scrape off the rest of the salt, and you're done. Except in my case, I felt it was a little bit overdone, so I went back with a thin coat of my original color, which was flat green, to help take away some of the weathering. Once I was happy with how the green surfaces turned out, I then used the same technique over the rest of the aircraft, spraying it with water, covering it with salt. Once the salt had dried, I could then spray my coat of white, remove everything, then repeat the whole process with a thin coat of black. I didn't learn my lesson from overdoing the weathering the first time because it did seem a little bit overdone, so I came back with a very thin coat of the base color, which is the light gray, and toned down some of the weathering. After sealing the aircraft with the coat of Mr. Color Super Clear gloss varnish, I moved on to the decals, which started with the tiger stripes on the rear of the aircraft, and those will definitely require some decal softener in order to get them to conform to all the raised bumps and edges and panel lines that they have to cross over. Once all the decals were complete, I sealed them in with another coat of gloss varnish from Mr. Color Super Clear 3, and then I applied a wash of black-brown oil paint. After I had wiped away that wash, I figured it looked a little too dark for the aircraft, so I repeated the whole process again, but with a light gray wash to help tone it down. On the canopy of these aircraft, there's a light brown rubber seal that is visible. So the kit came with 2 sets of masks that are about a millimeter difference in size, so you can apply them both at separate times. First you'll paint the light brown color, then you'll apply the second mask, and then paint the exterior color. So it's a great little addition that Eduard included on their mask set. Finally, towards the end, I sprayed everything with a flat coat of Mr. Color 182 Flat Clear. From that point on, I used PVA glue to attach some of the final detail parts so that it wouldn't react and ruin the paint job and the clear coat. Thanks for watching, guys. As you can see, I finally made a base for one of my aircraft. There will be a tutorial video on how I made that coming soon. Until then, hit the like button, the subscribe button, the bell button, and the applaud button. Hit every single button except the thumbs down button. Thanks, and I'll see y'all later.